I want to know what you think about what's gone on so far, the season, the way they handled the season, the way the season ended.
What can you say? They awarded a Stanley Cup champion. It was legitimate. They played a full playoff and extra. We had extra playoffs. Everyone wants that. Oh, I don't, but we had to. I think it was legitimate. I think the fact that the players bought in and we had very few problems, and if there were any positive tests, because I don't believe zero ever. I don't believe we ever get the full story on anything, but I think it's probably was 99.99% fine. So therefore, we'll go with it. We had a legitimate Cup champion, Tampa. Dallas were one of the top 4 teams in the West. That wasn't a fluke. The teams that shouldn't have won, Montreal, Arizona, and Chicago, who won in the first round, great playoff wins, got punted the next round. That's the way it should have been. And again, sports, anything can happen, or why play? We'll just play Stratomatic baseball, which I love, or Stratomatic hockey. But over the course of the playoffs, you know this in baseball, because you know I'm a huge baseball fan. In football, I'm not a basketball guy, but the same thing. Usually the better teams make it. It's rare that the Cinderella team goes all the way and wins. The 91 North Stars got beat by the Penguins in 6. That's the closest we've come. When the Kings won when they were an 8-seed team, they laid in the weeds that all season. You guys know that. They were a better team, and they finally got their act together and won. So I think it's legitimate. It's a shame the fans weren't there, but I think the NHL did an admirable job. But guys, having said that, and knowing a few people who work behind the scenes, like Mike Ross in Toronto doing the voicing for the NHL, one of the PA guys, that was an undertaking. That was enormous. The big, enormous one is coming up even now. You know that.
I want to get back to what you said. So you think that maybe there was some positive COVID and they just swept it under the rug, like 1 or 2 guys?
Would you?
I don't think so, because they weren't allowed to go anywhere. They were amongst themselves.
That's a good point. I didn't mean the players. I just meant more support staff and that who came in and out.
I think. Well, you and I weren't there, so we couldn't exactly eyeball what was going on. They wouldn't let us in,
which is why it worked. Because Ashley, you would have destroyed everything.
You're right. Yeah, I would have tried. Anyways, I think that the hockey players are a lot smarter than the football guys, a lot smarter than the basketball guys, a lot smarter than the baseball guys. That they didn't go anywhere. They stayed within that bubble. They just stayed within themselves. And the fact that's why they didn't get any COVID. No, there was no way they could get sick. There was absolutely no way. They just stayed hunkered down, and there was no way they could get sick.
I think you're probably right. So to sum it up, how can you not give it an A+? The only thing that revenue hurt because you didn't put people in the seats because it's inside. It's not outside like baseball and football. That's the big challenge now. But I'd have to give it an A+. And I'm going to tell you this, guys, too. I'm nostalgic for it right now. Early or late July with the exhibition games, but early August watching games from with the Eastern time zone from 12 noon till 2 in the morning, and they just roll into each other, and they're all important. I mean, if you told me when I was 10 that would happen, I would have been, where is this hockey nirvana? Where can I sign up? So it was great.
I agree with you, because they played hockey the first time. My birthday's in August, and the first time they played hockey on my birthday in my life, and it was nirvana. That was great. I think they've learned from college basketball, and they've learned from the other sports that if you have that, you'll have eyeballs watching. And then maybe you'll get newer fans is what the whole idea is you got to get newer fans, because you got to expand the product. You got to expand the game. You got to expand it to other things. It's now the 4th ranked sport in North America behind football. And the only reason football is popular because of gambling, in my opinion.
I love football, though. I'm a big football. That's what I played in high school. I love football.
Well,
but the gambling aspect.
You're not a small guy.
Yeah.
You're not a small guy, so.
Yeah, I know.
You're not a small guy, so I can see you playing football. I really enjoy CFL football, and I'm surprised they didn't try to make a go of it. Anyway,
economically, it couldn't work. I love it too. I'm an NFL and CFL guy. You can like both. They both have roots in the northeast of the U.S. and Canada back in the late 1800s. They both came from the same place and went a different route. I believe you can eat Burger King and McDonald's. I love both, as you can tell. So, they just economically couldn't make it work. They couldn't. It was too small of a league. The television contract, TSN up here in Toronto, helps keep the league afloat and does a really good job. It just didn't work.
So hopefully next summer they'll start again. Let's talk about your favorite team, the Montreal Canadiens. Haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1993, but they're sort of moving in that direction now. They signed John Allen. They signed Joel Edmondson. They signed Terry Toffoli. Where do you think this is all gonna when they traded Ty Domi? First, let me get you the free agents and what do you think about the deal from Domi?
Okay, first of all, yeah, I grew up a Habs fan. My dad was a Frank Mahovlich fan. I always joke that if he hadn't been traded first to Detroit and then Montreal, I would have grown up a Leaf fan, which I can't even imagine. So, you pick up stuff from your dad. I'm also a huge, as you know, Blues fan. That was my team as a kid. I had Montreal in the East, St. Louis in the West, because Gary Unger was the coolest guy going because he actually had long hair in the early 70s. Everybody else looked like they were Marines. And as a kid, the long hair was cool. So when the Blues won a cup last year, that was a big deal for me. But in this job, this, guys, that you cheer for all the teams, 31, soon to be 32. I can sit there and tell you, I really like this young Toronto team. They're an interesting team. I really like Boston. And I've always had a Boston love as a Montreal fan because they to me are the greatest rivalry in hockey. That's just my opinion. New York, that's good too, Alberta. But do I still somewhere inside look at Montreal, even though my job is to look at all? Sure, I do, because you never lose that. Here's what I'll say about Montreal. It's been an eon since they've won. Those glory days are long gone. They earned all those cups. Other teams could have done the same. They didn't. They didn't keep up with them. But the league has changed, and for the better. Sam Pollock, it would be interesting to see, and Frank Selke Sr. before him, who created the dynasty, who came over from the Leafs in the 40s. It'd be interesting to see how they would deal with today's reality. Back then, there were 7 teams in a 21-team league that really knew what they were doing. The others were bottom feeders. So it was between Montreal and Boston, the Islanders and the Flyers, the usual suspects. Just look at the Stanley Cup final all those years before people started to get their crap together. Having said that, it's tough. When you've got that, if Montreal didn't have their history, they were just, say, a team that joined the league when Nashville joined, then they would be this little underdog team that a lot of people would probably like. But they have the weight of history. They've got the 23 Stanley Cup banners in the NHL and the 24th before that. They've got them up there. And that weighs heavily on the guys wearing the uniform now because that's got nothing to do with them. 93 is a long time ago. And Ranger fans, 94 is just behind it, so don't get smug. Yeah, well, I hear you. What I think is interesting about Montreal now is I try to divorce the history from them. What have they done in the last 5 years? What have they done in the Bergevin era? And it's interesting because he came in on a sort of a honeymoon. He picked up some good signings. They got to the Eastern Conference Final a couple of times. Now, in 2010, it was because Yaroslav Halak played out of his mind. Let's be honest about that. But they were there again behind Carey Price. They just weren't good enough to get there. This mythology that they have been a failure is not true. But they've been a failure in the sense that they can't seem to get into the next gear. They always get stuck there. They're stuck in the mushy middle to a degree. Even this season, guys, I'm looking at the lineup. Steve Koulias and I did this a couple weeks ago before we went on vacation on the power play. And Steve said, well, Claude Julien, who we've all got respect for, I think, said, look, we're a playoff team. And so Steve said, are they? And I said, okay, well, let's look. Okay, well, they're going to make it, not Montreal. Okay, so I still think Boston's going to make the playoffs. The window's closing on them. They're aging, but they're still going to be there. Washington, okay. Pittsburgh, okay. I think Toronto's still there. They got a lot of interesting pickups there. So I'm going through, and the Islanders are still there. Before I knew it, the Rangers, they're getting better. I like Philly. And before you know it, I had no room. So I do not believe that Montreal is necessarily a playoff team. They'll be fighting tooth and nail for a wild card. And which I thought they would last year, but they actually finished 10 points back of a wild card. They wouldn't have had the generous playoff system because of COVID. They wouldn't have been there. So Ashley, I like what they've done. I like some of the additions, but I want to see if some of these lads can reach their potential. I think a lot of people picked on Bergeron for signing Jake Allen, but he was actually ahead of the curve on this because he knows it's going to be a condensed schedule. You better have a solid backup goalie. And Allen fit that role in St. Louis rather well behind Binnington when he lost his starting job. He didn't seem to sulk about it. He was really good as the backup, and that's what they're going to need. I think Montreal's a solid team, but I just think there's still better teams. So my long-winded answer, because since we're doing a show, is I think they're going to fight for a playoff spot. If things go their way, yeah, they could finish 6th or 7th, but they could also finish 9th or 10th. They're just going to be one of those teams.
See, I think Pittsburgh's going to take 2 steps back.
Possible.
I think that there's a lot of chaos over there. Malkin and Crosby are starting to get up in the 30s now, and they're starting to slow down a little bit, not a lot. I think the cast is a little bit less well or good. However, I can say proper English. I think they're the team that's going to take 2 steps back. I think Boston's going to take 2 steps back. No Torrey Krug. I don't think Chara's coming back because of COVID, and I think they're going to take 2 steps. I'm not, and Rask. I don't think Rask is coming back.
These are good points. These are good points. You're right, Ashley. That's why we play the games. On paper, Boston's still, to me, a better team than Montreal, for example. But they're always joined to the hip, these two teams. But you're right. Once we play and those factors in, you can start to see where there's a path for teams like a Montreal or a Florida, though they're kind of an interesting team, to suddenly jump in there. Craig Button has often said, the former GM and hockey guru, that in a regular season, 82 games, people say, well, can you tell by 20, 25 games? He says you can tell by 10 games, with some exceptions, what kind of team you have. That's 1/8 of your schedule. So if we're playing a 48-game season, a 60-game season, I know they still want to go January 1st. I'll believe that when I see it. Man, a fast start is going to be really important, Ashley. So you may be right. I'm not putting any money on it. I'll put your money on it if you want.
I'm broke. I'm broke. Oh, I wanted to ask you, what have you heard? Have you heard, you think, I've heard February, I've heard end of January, February, I've heard 56, I've heard 48, I've heard all kinds, I've heard bubble teams again, like each division will have a bubble. What have you heard?
I've heard no different than you. Yeah, sometimes we get told stuff by insiders off the record, but since we're not at the station, no, I'm hearing the same as you, and you probably even heard more than me, Ashley. They're all feasible scenarios. I know basketball is aiming to go, the 22nd of December?
Yes, and they just signed.
Except for the border issue, because the Raptors can just do a Blue Jays and play out of Buffalo or wherever the heck they're going to play. That's the one difference. They got to still play in buildings. They have the same health restrictions and challenges the NHL has. The border is the big issue. If you're going to do an all-Canadian division, which a lot of people up here want to do, it'd be novel. I'd do it I do it just to have hockey. Heck, I'd have the old Northwest Territories division. That's fine. Get Jeff Sanderson or wherever. He's still around. I think he was born there.
Got drafted.
Yeah, that's right. So put him in there. I would do it. You may have to have sort of quasi bubbles for, say, the Pacific Division to cut down on travel. You're going to have to do an MLB NFL model. You're not going to have a bubble like you had in Toronto, Devin. It's not going to happen again. It's too expensive. Players don't want to do it for an elongated period of time, and you can't blame them. Well, they're rich. They should do anything. Yeah, they're marionettes that dance for your pleasure, but there is, and they get paid well, most of them, not all. But they're not going to do that for a elongated period of time. So I think you're right, Ashley. We're going to see a moving sort of caravan. We may open up, just spitballing here, 20 games in these kind of bubbles in the sense of we're going to play in LA, San Jose, and Anaheim, we'll just say. And all the team, Dallas and all that, will play into that. And they'll go between the three. And then as we beat COVID back a bit, maybe a vaccine actually works and gets to people. That's all, that's going to happen at some point. But then you might see them open it up. I wouldn't be surprised if you play, say, a 50 game schedule and you finish again in the summer. Now the NBC Olympics, or otherwise known as the Summer Olympics, are looming on the horizon in Tokyo in third week in July. If that even happens, that's a big if too, because it's been delayed, as we all know. And NBC is going to put all the resources into that. I've had some people say to me, well, who cares? That's the Japanese time zone. You can play hockey and basketball in the day, and then you watch the Olympics. First of all, most people aren't up that time of night in North America. Second of all, NBC and the American networks, this, guys, most Americans consume the Olympics through packaged stuff. They don't watch it live. Remember, as you know, in 1980, a lot of Americans watched the Miracle on Ice through Canadian television in the Buffalo, Detroit, and Seattle area because we carried it live in the afternoon, and it was repackaged later for the evening, which was actually brilliant because by knowing the Americans won, which is one of the greatest wins ever, I was so happy. Everyone watched because everyone loves a winner, and everyone loves beating the Ruskies. So did I. So back to today, people are going to consume the Olympics because of the time zone in packages. So if you got hockey and basketball going at the same time, people are the Olympics, nobody cares for the most part for hurdling and running and swimming. They don't care until the Olympics come. Then everybody suddenly is an expert. It's just, I gotta watch. And that's what's going to happen again. So hockey and basketball may want to get their seasons done before the Olympics happens. If that happens, then you've got a ticking time bomb of a schedule, guys.
Do you think they'll play into July or the first week of July? Or you think
they'll have to? I think they'll have to. And they may have to go into August and compete with the Olympics, which they won't compete. It'll be a side thing. But you know what? Again, hockey is an inverted pyramid of interest. It's unfortunate. Football's the perfect setup, someone told me once. One of my buddies who works.
I've heard that. It is for television, yes.
Once a week, then you dissect it for 2 days, then you build up for the next game. There's one big championship game. Hockey, basketball, and baseball, unless your team's in it, there's an inverted pyramid of interest. That's why most people watch the first few rounds. I don't know a way around it.